Hey everyone and welcome to the Learning Ladder. I thought I'd do a tag video today. I don't think I've ever done one on this channel, and I have got a bunch of new subscribers, so thank you so much for everyone who has subscribed recently to my channel. It's so great to have you here, and for everyone who has continued to stay with me, thank you so much. So I thought it'd be good to do a tag now to get to know me a little bit more, and I couldn't find a one tag, so I just put a bunch of different tag questions together that I felt comfortable answering. So let's just get started. So number one is, are you married and how long have you been married for? So yes, I am married. I have been married for 9 years. Crazy. And the next question was, where did you meet? And we actually met online. This is crazy. In terms of, it just is. So basically we met online on a dating website. I know, how embarrassing. But you know, it's the place to meet people when you are like me and an introvert. I don't like going out. I don't like going to bars. I can count on one hand the amount of time I've ever done that, and it was the most awful experience ever. Being an introvert, I just don't like that sort of situation. I'm much more a go to the cinema, go to a restaurant, go to a theatre, go to an art gallery, that type of person, rather than going in a bar. And it's really hard to meet people in those other places. So I joined a dating website on a free trial, and I actually met my husband. The very second person or third person I spoke to within the 2-week trial period, so I didn't actually have to pay anything, which was very cool. He had been on the website for about a year and a half, I think, and had met a few people on there and had gone on dates and stuff, but no one had stuck. For me, he was my first boyfriend, which again is really embarrassing. The first person I'd ever had a relationship with, but 9 years later, so it obviously was meant to be. Number 3 is, what are your personality types, and do they differ? So completely different. I am introvert, I am very shy, I'm a thinker, and I really choose my words carefully in terms of how I affect people. So I'm considerate, and I strongly protect the people that I love. He is very extroverted. He is, and I'm very optimistic as well, and that's really important because he is the opposite, so we balance each other out. He's very pessimistic, so that does balance each other out. It can be draining sometimes when you're so enthusiastic and passionate about something and the other person's like, oh. It's like, that can be a bit interesting, but you know, you have to navigate these things in a relationship, and I do think it balances us out. He is also very academic. He has a master's degree, supports my decisions and things, which is really important the majority of the time, and we both are not strong personalities, so we don't, there's no one that kind of takes over the other person or anything like that. So we're not strong personalities, and we don't tend to argue at all. We'll have disagreements, but we don't argue because I'm not that sort of person. I don't like raising my voice, and neither does he. And he also was very similar to me in terms of he was never one to like go to bars and things like that. So yeah, I don't drink alcohol, never have. He does, occasionally. So again, that kind of is why we're not the bar type people, so that's why we ended up on the dating website. So yeah, anyway, that's our personality types. So number 4 is, do you want to have more children? Absolutely, it would be my dream. We both wanted to have 7 children. When we first met, one of the things, when you join a dating website, you're serious, you're not messing around, and we had the conversation right at the beginning is what kind of things do we want from our future, what we were looking for. And I wanted to have kids. I've been wanting to have kids from a very young age, obviously not below the age that you're supposed to, but I love children. That was my, when I was like in high school and I looked at my future, I always saw a big family. And he was the same, so we both said, yeah, we want to have 7 kids. So when we first met, it was crazy, but anyway, we have 1, and she is the most precious angel ever. The reason we only have 1 is because my husband has male factor infertility of unknown causes, so there is nothing that we can do other than to have IVF with ICSI in order to conceive. We did, which is why we have our beautiful daughter, and we did do another cycle, which I'll talk about in the next question, but we can't obviously afford to continue to do IVF. He does not want to do sperm donor. He has always been anti against that. Adoption is extremely difficult in the UK, and to get a baby would be impossible. So the only other option is, and it's an option we both agree on, is embryo donation, except embryo donation in the UK is extremely rare. So we would probably have to go overseas to do that, which I'm completely fine with, but we need the money, which we do not have. So that would be the plan, to do embryo donation once we were financially able to, and we found a place obviously that we could and everything else. Okay, so the next question is, what was the worst moment or point of your marriage? So going back to the other question, the worst moment of our marriage was when we did our second IVF cycle. So we conceived immediately on our first IVF cycle, and we did again on our second IVF cycle. But the difference with the second one was, this has not been confirmed, but from the symptoms, I pretty guaranteed it was that. I had an ectopic. So although it didn't actually do any damage to me because it managed to resolve itself, I was in extreme pain obviously, but it managed to figure itself out and pass naturally. So I didn't lose my tube, I didn't lose anything like that, but that's what we think happened. And the reason we think it happened is because the clinic where I had my IVF treatment did not do ultrasound guided embryo transfer. They just did the touch point technique, which worked perfectly fine with my first daughter, but obviously with the second it didn't. And I felt immediately wrong afterwards, and I was cramping. So what I think happened is it didn't go quite either in the right place in the womb and pop back out again, or I don't know, but that's why we think it was ectopic, because they didn't confirm it was exactly placed into the womb. And when you have IVF anyway, the risk of an ectopic pregnancy is greater, so it could have just been that. But I'm very suspicious about the fact that we didn't do ultrasound guided transfer, and considering we had to pay £8,000 for the IVF treatment, it was the worst point of our marriage for that, because I felt so terrible that we'd stolen £8,000 of money from my daughter to do the IVF, and that's what it felt like. Also obviously the fact that it didn't work and I had the miscarriage. So yes, I was pregnant, but about just before 6 weeks was when the pain started in my left side. And that was why we think it was ectopic as well, from the pain that I had in one side only, in the ovary area. So yeah, the reason it was the worst point of our marriage was all those reasons, but the main part was how my husband dealt with it afterwards. I was don't want to say fine, because I wasn't fine, but I managed to bounce back quickly because I had my daughter to take care of, and you know, she was alive and well, and you know, I was still a mother. But my husband found it extremely difficult because obviously he is the one who has the fertility issue, and we knew that that was our last chance of being able to conceive naturally, because we couldn't afford to do a third cycle. So he found that extremely difficult, and that was the worst point, I guess you could say. So the next question is, why did you decide on homeschooling? So actually I'm going to do the question after that, because it's still pertinent to personal stuff, and then we'll get onto the homeschool in a second. So the next question was life goals, and it's so funny because we were actually talking about last night, so short, medium and long-term goals. So in terms of our short, medium and long-term goals, we want to buy the rest of our house. We live in a shared ownership property, so we only own half of our house. Well, we don't own it on a mortgage, but you know what I mean. So we want to purchase the rest of it. We did look at selling, but it was extremely difficult to sell just the share. So it seems like buying the whole thing is going to be the best option, and then you can sell it to anybody, because with shared ownership you can only sell to people who are qualified for shared ownership, which means that they have to be on a lower income, they have to have never owned a property before. You know, there's a strict criteria, and to find someone was extremely difficult. So we think buying the whole property might be easier, and then we could sell it. But ultimately I would like to move to the country or by the ocean. Those are the types of things that we all like. I would also love to move abroad. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but if I could ever, my ideal place to live would be Colorado in the United States. I absolutely love it, or anywhere in Canada, because I don't like hot, so I wouldn't want to go to Australia. New Zealand's an option, but the cost of living doesn't match up currently anyway. That might change. Colorado or anywhere in Canada. Right, back to homeschooling now. So the next question is, why did you decide on homeschooling? Hold on a sec. When I started looking at schools in the area we live, I was extremely nervous and did not like any of them. They were very low rated, and I didn't feel comfortable sending my daughter there. We also don't live in, I guess what you could say, I don't know how you could describe it. It's a deprived area, I guess you could say, and that reflects on the children and the families that live here. There's a lot of people that live on benefits. There's a lot of people, when I say benefits, I mean government assistance. There's a lot of people who have difficulties in their families in the area. So it sounds terrible, but I didn't want my daughter to go into that situation. And I felt strongly led to homeschooling. And I've never regretted it. It's been the best decision I've ever made. Number 7 actually, were you homeschooled? No, I was not homeschooled. I went to public school my whole entire life. My husband was actually homeschooled until he went to college, which is not university, which is further education. I don't know what you classify it as in the United States. So basically it's the point where you've done your initial examinations in high school and then you have to do more to be able to go to college. I think in the US you just do it all in one. You don't leave high school until you're ready to go to university. But in the UK it's different. You have to do your what we call GCSEs, which is what you do in high school. Then you have to do A-levels, which is what you do in college, and to go and get your degree in university. Next question is, do you plan on homeschooling until exams or the end? And yes, provided my daughter wants to, I'm fully committed to doing so. I absolutely love homeschooling. I love teaching. It's so amazing to see her develop and flourish. So yes, we have every intention of continuing unless she didn't want to, or unless we were in a situation to pay for private education and my daughter wanted to do that. Those would be the only situations when we would do it. I would never willingly send her to public school unless she wanted to, because I just feel the education system here is broken. I would consider private education if she wanted to, if we could afford to, but I would never seek that out unless she wanted to, because I absolutely adore homeschooling. The next question is, what is your favourite type of vacation? If you don't see, I don't know if you can actually see, I'm wearing mini. So I love Disney World. It is the most fantastic experience when you have children, to take them and see their reaction and everything else. I also like the ocean, so beach holidays. I'm not the sort of person who is happy sitting by the pool on a sunbed. I crisp. Sun and me do not cohabitate. I burn. So I'm not the sort of person who sits by the pool, but my daughter would hate that anyway. She'd probably be fine in the pool for a short period, but she likes to, adventure, and so she's not that type of person either. Neither is my husband either. We're not that sort of type of person, but we do like going to the beach. We do like, I'd say, more your exploring type of holiday, but it's more difficult to do that sort of thing with children this age because obviously there's limits to what you can do, but in the future those are the types of holidays I foresee for us. And there are certain places that my husband wants to go to that's on his wish list. There are obviously places I want to go to, and obviously I want my daughter to go to as many places as she wants to, but that all costs money, so obviously you have to balance that out. The next question is, what is your homeschool style? And I've mentioned this in a previous video. It's a mix of classical and Charlotte Mason, but I'm also quite eclectic because I like to pull different elements from different things. The next question is, what is your parenting style? So my parenting style is very relaxed. We do have a routine to a point. It's very child-led. So I breastfed, I baby-led weaned, I cloth diapered, so is that crunchy? I don't know, but there's another question coming up which I won't say, but we'll get to that. So I'm crunchy, but not to a point. I never do any kind of smacking. I'm completely against that. My type of punishment is positive reinforcement as much as possible, or worst case scenario would be something's taken away, so but that's the last resort. So usually it's an electronic device of some description, so tablet or TV, those types of things. I never did any kind of cry it out. I was very child-led, and obviously only having one child, you could probably argue that that's easier. When you've got more kids, you perhaps maybe have to be a bit stricter. And that's not to say that she doesn't have good manners, isn't respectful, or anything like that. And obviously she's a kid, she has a moments where she has a tantrum. All kids do. When she was like 2, lying on the floor, you know, we've all been there. You know, she's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but the way I handle it, I guess that's the way the question is directing us. The parenting style, as I said, I'm very relaxed. We do have structure in terms of she has a bedtime, she has bath times, not to like, oh, it has to be at this specific 7:01 or whatever like that. It's just the flow of our day, basically. But you know, she knows what's expected of her in terms of manners, how to treat people, but I don't do any kind of like corporal punishment or anything like that. I would never do that, ever, and that dates back to my childhood. The next question is, do I vaccinate? And I don't know why this is such a controversial subject. Yes, we do vaccinate. We didn't vaccinate on the schedule because we had a reaction to a vaccination, so we vaccinated on a schedule we were comfortable with. And do I feel everyone should vaccinate? I think you have to completely make your own decision, as long as you're making your decision based on fact, and not, you know, hearsay or anything like that. But I'm also not against people who do not vaccinate, and I think it's when you are and you're so negative towards that aspect, it just makes people tunnel further down into what they think is the right thing. So I am not I don't even know what the word is. I'm not anti-vax. You do you. Basically, that's my philosophy on a lot of things. You do you. But my daughter having had the reaction, and also we did have a family history of people who were adversely affected by vaccinations. I can understand why people would be scared, and I also see a vaccination as a medicine. So medicines have side effects. I think some people get down this tunnel vision of, oh, everyone has to be vaccinated and it's completely safe, there's no side effects, you should have it, and if the side effects are there, they're very minimal. And I don't think that that's the case. There are side effects to any kind of medication you take, and you have to be aware of that. You have to read the vaccination inserts, and you have to check family history if there's going to be any adverse reactions. So I just think, do your research medically, not hearsay, but ultimately the parent should always have the final decision, and from what I believe, provided obviously you're treating your children correctly and, you know, within the law and everything else, then I do not feel, I know that there's a lot of controversy at the moment where people are saying that in the US particularly, that you should, or parents should have to legally vaccinate their children, and I don't agree with that at all. I think provided you're providing medical care for your children, you're not doing anything illegal, your children are well taken care of, loved, the parent should always have the right to make that decision, and you're making it from a medical standpoint. But to say that everyone should have a vaccine is completely ridiculous, because it's a medication at the end of the day, and medications have side effects, and you wouldn't prescribe everybody the same medication just on the basis of that it's completely safe to do so, because people will have side effects. So you do have to acknowledge that those side effects exist, and I think a lot of controversy in the vaccination industry is that people don't. I remember every single time we went to the doctor, and for anything else, fortunately my daughter's been very healthy, so we haven't had much sickness, but whenever we did go for well baby checks and everything like that, they would always ask where were we on a vaccination schedule, and if I at that point hadn't done that particular vaccine in that particular order, I would get asked why, and I would explain because of what happened when my daughter had this vaccination, and they would look at me blank as if to say, what happened? And that would be the same thing every time. So I think there is an issue with doctors not reporting on vaccination reactions, and not acknowledging that that's a fact. And I think that's very dangerous and leads people into this strong belief of being anti-vaccination. I do think vaccinations are amazing and have a place, but I also don't think that it should be blanket, that it's absolutely safe and fine for everyone to have them. And I think if we stepped away from that and acknowledged that yes, there are issues with vaccinations and some people do not respond in the same way as others, that would really make a difference, especially to those people who were on the fence. So they weren't anti-vax and they weren't pro-vax, they were unsure. If someone said to them, yes, you can have this vaccination, you can be completely fine, but yes, there are issues and you have to be aware of that, then that would enable them to feel like they could make an informed choice, rather than it being this coverted thing where everything's covered up in terms of reactions and you have to go through a tribunal to get anyone to acknowledge the fact that yes, vaccinations can have issues. But anyway, that was a really long answer. But yes, we are pro-vaccination, and I would encourage you to do your research before you decide, but I would vaccinate my child. And I have. The next question is, do you have any pets? Yes, we have 2 dogs. We have 2 Cavalier King Charles. I absolutely adore animals. I would have tons more. I can see a pug in our future, maybe when my daughter's a lot older, because they are extremely expensive. I can definitely see another Cavalier in our future. I would love to get horses, but you know, this is Isabella's fantasy because we do not have the money for any of these things. But if we did, I'd love to have, my ideal home would be in Colorado. I'd have my ranch, I'd have my horses, I'd have you know, dogs, and I'd grow my own crops. And oh wow, I sound crazy, but those are all the things that I would love to have. And they're all complete fantasy. I don't envisage them ever happening, and that doesn't sound very like an optimistic sort of person, but I'm also a realist as well as an optimist, but that would be my dream. The next question is, what are your favourite hobbies? I love to read. I'm an avid reader, if you can see any of my books. I don't watch much TV. There are certain things that I watch seasonally. For example, I'm currently watching The Handmaid's Tale. I love that. I love Grey's Anatomy. I love The Gilmore Girls. So I'm seasonal, so I'll watch what's on. I also really like baking shows. So the Great British Bake Off is coming up soon. I'm really excited to watch that. What else do I watch? I like watching sci-fi stuff. So what was that one I watched recently? Oh, I can't think, but it's the lady from Battlestar Galactica. Kara from Battlestar Galactica was in it, and I can't think what the show is. It's just been recently on Netflix. I really enjoyed watching that. Basically, they went off to an alien artifact landed on Earth, and they went off to another planet to find out what it was all about. That was a good series on Netflix. I like watching movies, but not very often. Now, I used to watch a lot more TV, but obviously when you have children and you homeschool, your priorities change, which is completely fine. If I watch movies nowadays, it tends to be kids' movies. So yeah, I think that's it, hobbies-wise. Reading. Oh, I like to write. So reading, writing, and hiking. I like to do nature stuff. I like to go on days out as much as possible, as much as you can within your budget. Historical sites, all those types of things. I would love to do like a historical tour of Europe and things. So I've never been to Rome. I have never been to Venice and all those types of places. I'd love to do that. But obviously once my daughter was older, because she wouldn't enjoy those types of things at the moment. I've never been to Paris either, so I'd like to go to all the art galleries, and that would be definitely something I'd love to do as a homeschool trip, but I want her to enjoy it, so I think 2 years maybe, and then she'd be ready to do something like that. I think that's it for hobbies. I love the idea of being crafty, so I like baking, but in terms of crafts, I would love to be able to be more crafty, to knit and to do all those types of things. I can only do it on a very basic level, but I do enjoy it when I can do it, but I'm not very good at it. Favourite food is the last question. Favourite food, I love Chinese food, I love Italian food. I do not like spicy. I do not do spicy at all. And I don't eat a ton of meat. I don't eat fish apart from tuna. So I'm not very adventurous, I guess you could say, with my food. But I tend to eat reasonably healthy. But I love my sweets, and that's not good for my teeth. Thankfully, I have been very stringent with my daughter in terms of her teeth. She's never had fizzy drinks. She has a smoothie, obviously, but she drinks water with her meals or milk. I was the sort of kid who every single meal I had fizzy pop, I had soda. I never ever drank water as a child, ever, hence my issue with my teeth. So I've always really tried to protect my daughter's teeth as much as possible. Obviously she still has treats, so she'll still have chocolate and she'll still have cake and all these types of things, but just as treats, not as a after each meal type thing, whereas I did. So yeah, favourite food, Indian, Italian, Chinese. I don't like Indian food. Italian, Chinese, nothing against Indian food, I just don't like spice. So Italian, Chinese, and I like picky things. So if you were to put me in front of a buffet, I would be in my element. So I like to try little bits of different things. I'm not the sort of person who sits down and has a 3-course meal. That would not be fun for me. Unless it was 3 desserts, then that'd be great. So that's everything in this tag. If you've got any more questions, leave them below. Take care, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.